This video is going to cover page 9 in the commercial solution document, which is the detailed wall section. So the first thing we're going to do is place our wall section cut, which you can see in quite a few of the floor plans, but I'll just drag onto the screen real quick again. A copy of our solution. And so we have two wall sections. We have one cutting through here on level 2. This is our detailed one, and then we have one that isn't as detailed as much. So we're actually going to focus on this one first, and then we'll go through and add this one afterwards. And this one's going to be a heck of a lot easier to do. But I like to do kind of the difficult part of adjusting first. So to create our wall section cut, and I'm just going to have this on another screen so I can just reference back and forth to the various components we'll put in. I'm going to go into my level 2 floor plan because I wanted to cut through this window here that's on level 2. And if I'm on my level 2 floor plan, it'll be easier to place the wall section there. So next, I'm going to create a wall section, which I can do with my regular section tool, which again is either going to be this shortcut button here in my toolbar, or keyboard shortcut SE, or in the View tab, and then the section button here. So you can use any of those options to start it. And instead of creating a building section like we did for our other two, we're going to create a wall section. So I'm going to choose the wall section option here in my properties panel. I'm going to click to start and then click to finish. Now it's facing the wrong way, but I can just use these arrows here just to flip it over real fast. And I want to make sure that it's going through that window. So I'm just going to nudge it a little bit. And I think that's going to be pretty good. It's going a little further than I'd like, so I'm just going to drag this endpoint to about here-ish. Notice how I'm keeping it in the building still of where that view extent is. So I don't have an exact point of where I'm going to drag it, but I'm just going to drag it kind of in. And it's made a new section in my project browser for wall section. So I can either double click on the section head to open that view up, or I can open up wall sections and I have section 1 here. And I'm just going to right click on it to rename it. And I'm going to call this one wall section NS north south 1, and then enter. So immediately our detail level is not high enough for it. So we're going to click on our little square here and change our detail level up to medium. So that way we can see a little bit more going on in here. And then we also want to change our scale of our view as well. So to change our scale, we can change that here or here. And we want a scale of 3/4 of an inch is equal to a foot. So it looked like our lines got smaller and our hatches got smaller. In reality, the drawing just got a lot bigger. And I'm going to click on my crop box and just kind of bring it in on the side here a little bit more. The next thing I'm going to do is split this into 3 main views. So one view that's focusing on my foundation and floor connection, and then another that's focusing on the connection underneath the window, as well as the connection on above and with the roof. So to split this into different views, I'm going to click on these squiggle lines here. So I'm going to click on the squiggle line to make a small view down here. And then I'm going to drag this grip to make this a little bit larger. And then I'm going to click this squiggle line to split it into 3. And I want my top view to at least show a little bit of the window. And this bottom view, I'm going to keep pulling until I can see a little bit of the bottom of the window. And then I'll move that up. I'm just kind of eyeballing the view sizes for now. And then I'll click on them once and I'm going to drag all of it down. I don't want to bring it too close, otherwise it will rejoin, but I do want to just kind of bring them fairly close. And this one as well, I'll drag down. So that way I have it as 3 separate views. Before I start adding in all of my details, what I'm going to try to do is make sure that this is going to fit onto the paper in its current size. So I'll bring this bottom down a bit or up a bit. I'll bring this top part down a bit, just trying to condense it as much as possible. And I'm just going to go onto this template sheet. So I'll double click on this template sheet here. I'm just going to drag and drop it just to verify that this view fits. So in that ArcD template sheet, I'm going to drag my wall section north-south, and then I'm going to click to place it. And so that way I can make sure that it fits. If it doesn't fit on the sheet, what I can do is still in this template view, I'm going to double click on the view, and we'll see that everything kind of got half-toned. I can then adjust it, make this a little bit smaller, and pull this down and pull this down just so I can make sure that all three of these views are going to fit here on this piece of paper. Once I know it fits, I'm just going to click on it and delete it from the sheet. And then I can go back into the view here to edit the view or start adding in some of my details to it. So there's a couple of different things going on in here. We have some detail components. Again, I'll just drag the view over real quick. We have some detail components going on in here. So those are going to be things like our CMU bricks, as well as our C channels inside of our wall, all of our CMUs coming up here, our veneer for the split face CMUs, our bond bridge, our 2x12 hanging out up here. Those are all detail components, which are kind of like 2D components. So like our toilet and sink were 3D. These are things that are only going to be in this view. Then we also have some detailed lines going on in our drawing, and then some regions, some filled regions, and of course some text boxes as well. So to add these in, we're going to use the detail component tool, which is either keyboard shortcut DC, or in the annotate tab, it's a button here that says component, which is a different button than the regular component tool. The first thing we'll have to do though is load in a detail component to represent our CMUs in the foundation. So we're going to do keyboard shortcut LF for load family. And then all of the stuff we're looking for is going to be in this detailed item folder. So I'm going to go in that folder right away. And we're looking in the masonry category under concrete masonry unit. And I'm going to bring in a CMU 2 core in section. So I'm going to check that option off and load it. And then I'm going to use the detail component tool, which again is keyboard shortcut DC or this button here in the annotate tab. It might be larger on your screen depending on your resolution. But it wants to by default put in a 4x8 one, and we want a 12 by 8 CMU. So I'm going to click in my properties and I'm going to do 12 inches by 8 inches. And then I can click to place my first one at the bottom of my foundation wall. And then I can place my second one right on top of it. And then usually it doesn't actually place for whatever reason. So I'm going to hit escape a couple of times, go back into the tool, and then for whatever reason, I can place a second one and a third one. I don't know why it glitches, but it does. So if it glitches, you can just hit escape and end the tool and then go back into it. Now, I could do the same thing for all of the CMUs running up my wall. So I could do DC for detail component, change my size to an 8x8x16, and I can place one and then go place my second, but not have it placed, and then go place a third and then go back. But like, that's going to be really annoying to do. So a better option is to create a repeating detail component, which is if you click on the little arrow underneath the detail component tool or next to it and do a repeating detail, what it wants to do by default is brick, We're going to click on Edit Type. We're going to, of course, duplicate it first, and I'm going to call this one 8-inch CMU. I'm going to change the detail that is going to repeat from a standard brick to a CMU 2-core in section 8x8x16. And then I'm going to change the spacing to 8 inches. And I'll click OK. And then I'm going to click on where my wall starts on the inside. Move my cursor up. I just realized I did 8-foot spacing, so I'm going to hit Escape, Edit, change my spacing to 8 inches instead of 8 feet. Click, and then as I move my cursor up, it's just going to fill in with bricks until I reach underneath my window. I'm going to leave some space here so I can add that bomb beam in, so I'll just click to start. And again, I'm going to go up all the way until I reach my roof. And then I'll hit Escape 100 times. I'm going to load in another detail component for that bond beam. So that's keyboard shortcut LF. And I'll do a bond beam single in section. I'll load that. I'll click on the little arrow next to or underneath the component tool and just place a single detail component. Again, it wants to do a 4-inch one by default, but if I click in my properties panel, I can change it to an 8x8. Place that single one in. I'll hit Escape a bunch of times. When I eyeballed this, I didn't start it perfectly, but I can click on it and I can drag that grip to actually move it down, and that'll then fix my top as well. So if you didn't go far enough with your top, you can always just drag it directly to that endpoint. There. We also have some repeating detail components for our split face CMUs. So we'll first load those in. So that's keyboard shortcut LF. I'm going to do here it is, a split face CMU in section. So I'm still in this concrete masonry unit folder. I'll load that. And then I'll click on my little arrow next to or under the detail component tool and do a repeating detail. I'm going to edit, and I'm going to duplicate this and call this one 4-inch split face CMU. The name you give it really doesn't matter. And then I'm going to change the detail to a split face CMU 4 inches by 8 inches by 16. And I'll leave that spacing at 8 inches. I'll click OK. And I'm going to go from the floor all the way up to the bottom of the window. And then while I'm still in the tool, I'll start it at the top of the window all the way up to the roof in there. Next, let's see, how many other detail components do we have? We've got some lintels and some steel shelves in there, so we need to add in some brackets just to support underneath our openings. So I'll hit Escape a bunch of times, and we'll do another detail component that we'll have to load in first. So I'm going to do keyboard shortcut LF. I'll get out of the masonry folder, so I'm going to go back into the detail item folder. And let's go to metals. And then I want this angle here. I could specify, I'm trying to see if there's a better one that I could use, but I think I'll just use this one right here, this angle shape here, and load it in. And this one's going to ask me for various sizes to load in. So what I'm going to do is look for one that's 4x4. 4-inch by 4-inch, and then we have a couple of various thicknesses. Let's do the 3/8 one. Sure. And now that I've loaded that in, I'm going to click on my little arrow. This button will always change to whichever one you used last. So since we last did a repeating one, if I was just to click on the button, it would try to do a repeating again. But I want to do just a regular detail component or keyboard shortcut DC. And then if I want to flip this around, I can hit the space bar to flip it. I'm going to put that right outside of my brick here. And then I have another one hanging out where I want to put my steel shelf here. So I'm actually going to flip it around and just place it here for the time being and hit escape a bunch of times because I do need to change a little bit about what's happening with my repeating here. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to drag that end down just to leave a gap here. And then I'm going to load in a family, or actually, I won't need to load in a family, excuse me, I already have it. So I'm going to do DC for detail component. I'm going to change myself to a 8" by 4" CMU. Place one right here. And then I'll hit escape a bunch. I'll go back into repeating detail component. So still in the annotate tab, repeating. And I'll change my repeating detail to an 8" CMU. I'm going to start it right at my roof up to the top and then hit escape. So that way I have a little gap here. And then I'm just going to move this into place for the time being. Boop, boop. If it's sitting behind something and you want it in front of it, you can always right click on that component and bring it to the front, or there's also an option here to bring to front. So that way it's sitting in front of it. My last couple of details is I need this here sitting in front, but because it's part of the model, I can't do that. So what I need to do is right click on it, hide in view element to just make it disappear for the time being. And then I can use my detail component to load one in. So I'm going to first do LF for load family. And then in the steel joist framing category, or in metals and then steel joist framing, we're going to bring in a K-series bar joist and click load. The one we used was a 14 K6, so this will be the one we'll load in. And now that it's loaded in, we'll go to our regular detail component, which is DC, or our little arrow to switch ourselves over to detail component. And it's facing the wrong way, and we can't even space bar to flip it. So what I'm going to do is just click to place it for the time being, hit escape 100 times, click on it, and then I'm going to use the mirror tool to flip it around. And we can use this mirror tool or this mirror tool while we have it selected. I'll use pick axis, and then I'm just going to click one of these vertical lines. Doesn't really matter which one. And now I have a flipped copy. I'll hit escape a bunch of times. I'll click and delete. And then I'm just going to drag this kind of into place. You'll see that it is too short for our view, but what we can do is click off of it, click once on our view here, and then I can drag that endpoint in, and now it's the perfect length for it. Our last few detail components we'll load in is we're going to put a 1 by 12 over here on top of here, which will just kind of give us a nailing surface for our flashing and coping as we add that in. So I first got to load that in. So that's keyboard shortcut LF. I'm going to go back to my detail items, and it'll be in the wood category. So wood and plastic. And then we have wood framing. And then we have nominal cut lumber in section. And I'll load this. And we're going to load in a 1 by 12. Once we have that loaded in, we can use the keyboard shortcut DC, or in the Annotate tab, the Component tool. And it is a 1x12. I can use the space bar to flip it. And I'm just going to roughly place it. It doesn't have like an exact point where it's going. I'm just going to place it somewhere for the time being. Then I'll hit escape a billion trillion times. And let me just double check. Yeah, because there's one more detail component we're going to load in, which will be the C channels we're going to use for our, can I think of words? Within our walls, which will kind of help, they'll carry wiring, and sometimes too they'll be used to support floors. So I'm going to go into LF for load family. I'm going to go back into the detail items, back into the metals folder, and I believe this one, no, it's not in steel joist framing. Might be in structural steel framing. No. Structural metal stud framing is where we want to go. There we are. And we're going to do a C stud in section. And the size that I'm going to use when I go to place my component is the 1 inch 5/8. And I know this because I'm just reading it off the drawing. I just have the drawing on a different sheet. And I'm going to place one right at the bottom of my floor, and then one at the next brick up. But they're also going to be spaced 2 feet for each one of these. So what I'm actually going to do is just to create a repeating detail to make this a little easier. So I'm going to hit escape a bunch of times, go into my repeating detail, edit type, duplicate, and I'm going to call this one C stud. For my detail that I'll repeat will be, I'll scroll up until I find the C stud 1 5/8 with a fixed distance of 2 feet. And then I'll hit OK. And then I'll place my next one, which I wish it was going that way. Maybe I'm not going to be able to do it this way. Drat. Oh, I can change the rotation. Let's see 90 clockwise. See if that fixes it. Cool. So I'll place this one, and then I'm just going to keep going up and up and up until I reach my floor. And then I'm going to put another one right underneath where this floor is to the window. And I'll hit escape a couple times just because I want to move it up a little bit so it sits on that floor. And then I've got one right under the window. And then our next one will start another repeating detail right on top of the window until we get to the roof. So I could have also just like counted every 3 bricks to figure out where they go, but I just thought the 2-foot repeating detail could be a little bit easier aside from where we get to this floor, and then it makes a small shift for it. Especially because we can kind of even see, depending on where we make this section cut, is going to have an impact on whether or not one shows or doesn't show for it. So sometimes that's going to have an impact on your drawing. In there. Okay. The rest of the components, and I just want to double check again that I don't leave one out, but the rest of them, I don't know why that keeps coming in so small. Could be stuff we bring in. So these little dots here are rebar. We could put those in as detail components, or we could just draw them in manually. And I'm just going to draw them in manually. The same thing for like what's going on in my bond beam here. So the rest of them are all just going to be detail components that I actually just use detail line to draw in. So our next part is we're going to add in some filled regions for our building. And I'll start my way at the bottom of the building and kind of work my way up. So we have a 1-inch piece of rigid insulation here, just for kind of like an expansion joint in our floor here for our concrete slab. So I'm going to start the region tool, which is in the annotate tab, and it's this button here. Or to do a filled region is keyboard shortcut RF if you're using my custom ones. So I'm going to start the region tool. For my line weight, I'm going to use a medium line for my line style. And for my region type, I'm going to do an ortho crosshatch. And then I'm going to create a rectangle right on my edge here. And the only thing I really care about is if it's 1 inch wide and I want it to be 6 inches tall. So I'm going to click just to make it. And then I'm going to click on this number here and change this to just 1 inch. That's 1 foot. 0 space 1. Enter. And then I'll click OK or my green check. And what I've done is just made a new little area that has a different hatch pattern there. I'm going to do another one for a layer of 2-inch rigid insulation that's sitting underneath here. So again, that's keyboard shortcut RF or this region button here in the annotate tab. I'll leave all my line style at medium and my filled region at ortho crosshatch. And I'm going to create a rectangle. And I'm just going to make it however long I want it to be. As long as it goes out of that crop region, I'm going to be good. And then click on this number to make it 2 inches. I'll click my green check. And then I'm just going to use my arrow keys on my keyboard to kind of scooch it pretty close to the wall, but not touching, and pretty close to this floor, but not touching, because I want to add a detail line in underneath that later. I'll hit escape a bunch of times, and then we're going to put in a layer of 6 inches of crushed gravel underneath this. So again, that's going to be region, but we don't have a gravel region that we can add. So we're going to go into edit type. We're going to duplicate and we're going to create one that's gravel. And then for our fill pattern, we're going to change it from crosshatch here to, we're going to use dense sand for this. And then we'll click OK. And then again, I'm going to make another rectangle right on this one. As long as it goes past my crop limit on my side, on my left, I'll be okay. And I want it to be 6 inches. So if it's not 6, I could just click there and make it 6. But I just made mine 6 to begin with. And then I'll click the green check. And then we also have a layer of backer board and rigid insulation on the outside of our foundation wall. So I'm going to go back into the region tool. I'm going to switch my properties for my pattern to the ortho crosshatch. I'll leave my line style on medium, and I'm going to make a rectangle on this foundation. I'm going to make it 2 inches wide. And as how tall am I going to make it? About that tall. I want to leave a little bit of space between where my split seam U is and where this part where it ends. But I'm not necessarily measuring it, but I want it 2 inches wide, and I'll hit my green check. And I'll split it in half later. And then we also have a gravel for our French drain system outside on our foundation. So for this one, I'm going to create another filled region. For my pattern, I'm going to use gravel, and I'm going to add the rounds to it afterwards. So some of it I'm going to measure, some of it not so much. But I'm going to use the line tool to just draw, and then I'll go up almost about a brick tall. I'll go out about this far on an angle. I'll go down, over, back up, back over, and then I'm going to hit escape a couple of times, but I'm not going to hit my green check yet. I'm going to drag this bottom line down so that it's flush with my bottom of my footing. And then I'm going to use this fillet tool here. So I'm going to click on this tool to add a curve to these 2 points, as well as clicking on these 2 lines to add a curve. And I'm not necessarily making it a specific size. If I wanted to, I can change it and make like this one 3 inches, hit escape a couple times, click on this one, make this one 3 inches. So I can make it a specific amount, but I just kind of was eyeballing it. And I'll hit my green check. And now I've got my French drain, and I could always too move this in more if I don't like it. I can move that up more, but I'm just going to kind of leave it as is for my system. And that should be all of the filled regions on the bottom of our building. Let's go up to the top of our building, because we also then are going to have a layer of like cementous board on top of our roof. But while it is going to be 1/2 inch thick, we're going to leave this dense board, draw it a little bit thicker just so we can actually like see it in the drawing. So I'm going to make another region. This one will be vertical lines with a medium line style, and I'm going to make a rectangle. I'm going to make it 1 inch tall. And again, as long as it goes past my crop region on the left, I'm happy. I'll hit my green check. I'm just going to scooch it over and down so it's not quite exactly flush, but it's pretty close. The more you zoom in, the smaller amounts, those arrow keys will scooch things up and down for you. So that's going to be the last of my filled regions, except I need to do a couple of masking regions or filled regions that also don't mask. So I want to add in a concrete fill inside my wall here. So what I'm going to do for that is create another filled region, but I'm going to go edit my fill region type. I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to call this one like CMU concrete fill. I'm going to change my pattern to dense sand, but I'm going to uncheck this masking option, which essentially is going to make it so that it is transparent. It has a transparent background, but it will still put our little dots. I'll click OK. And then for my line style, I'm going to switch it to invisible line. And then I'm going to use my rectangle option to just draw inside my CMU cells from one corner to the other, and then I'll hit my green check. If when you hit your green check you don't see any of the fill, you need to just click bring to front and it'll be there. Which, whoops, looks like I did not uncheck masking. I did not. So I need that unchecked. There we go. And then I'll do another one here. So that's region, using that concrete fill with invisible lines. I'll do a rectangle inside these CMUs. Green check. This one kind of already has it in there, so that's why I'm not bothering to fill it in. And then another region with my concrete CMU fill, an invisible line, rectangle from underneath my window. And this one I'm going to carry all the way through to the other view even. Green check. Hit escape a couple times. And then last one of these, I'll do a region. Click on my little rectangle. All my settings are still the same. Just inside here, and then green check. The other type of region that I'll want to use is what we call a masking region. And so up here where we have our joist in here, we want to get rid of the hatch pattern that's showing up just from the building in general. So I'm going to click on the little arrow underneath fill region or next to it and do a masking region. And I'll keep my line style as invisible line, and you'll see that we don't get any options here. And I'm going to just draw a rectangle just roughly around. I don't want to go too close to the edge, but I want it pretty close. And we could always adjust it afterwards. I'm going to hit the green check. When I click off it, it has just kind of this whiteout area. If I want to adjust it, I can click on it. I can kind of pull it to make it a little bit taller, a little bit wider. If I make it too wide though, it might cover the line weight. So I might not want it too wide. And then I want to bring my steel shelf. So I'm going to click on that and click bring to front. I'll click on this beam and click bring to front. So that way it's sitting in front of it. And then also at the bottom of my building, I'll use a masking region for the French drain, which is 4 inches in diameter. So we'll do another masking region. For my line style though, I'm going to do a wide line and draw a circle that has a radius of 2 inches because that'll give it a diameter of 4. And then I'll hit my green check, and then I've got that French drain there. Additionally, we're going to add in some detail lines to this view. So detail lines, we've used them before to create like our turning radius for our wheelchair, and then our center lines, but we'll use them here as well. So the first one I'll add in is we have a hidden line here, just kind of representing the plastic layer that's in between our rigid insulation and our concrete. And so that's keyboard shortcut DL, or in the annotate tab, it's this button here. Our line style will be hidden. And then I'm just going to zoom in to try to eyeball it well in between those and just make it a little bit longer than it needs to be. If it didn't go in between those too well, if it's too close to one side, we can always use our arrow keys to move it up and down. And then I'm also going to use the detail line tool to create kind of all of my other detail pieces. So I'll do keyboard shortcut DL for my line style. For my rebar, I'll do first, I'm going to do wide. And I'm going to start it centered underneath my window. And I'm going to bring it all the way through to my foundation. And then I'm going to make a hook towards the left. And before I hit escape, I'm going to go into the fillet arc tool and click on these 2 lines. And I'll give it a fillet of about that much. I'm not necessarily measuring it. Then I'm going to hit escape a bunch of times. And I'm going to select all 3 of these. I'm going to click on one, hold control, click on the curve, and then I'm going to click on the long line that goes through everything. And I'm going to use the mirror pick axis tool, which will be this button. And I'm going to mirror it across the middle of the foundation. So that way I have a flipped copy over here. Now it's too long at the top, but I can click on the line and I could just drag it all the way down till it's only in my foundation. And now I have those two pieces of rebar for my foundation in there. I'm going to use the detail line tool as well to create my rebar dots. So for this, I'll go back into the Annotate tab and use Detail Line or keyboard shortcut DL. And I'll keep it on wide line, and I'm going to make a circle just kind of on that midpoint that's like pretty small. It didn't even want to let me make one that small. DL, right on that center. Circle. Where was my center? Let me escape a bunch. Let me see if I can make it. There we go. And then I'm just going to use my arrow keys just to kind of move it up. And these are spaced 10 inches on center. So I'm going to click on this one, copy, grab it, and then I'm going to go over 10 inches, hit escape, grab it, copy, grab it by its center, and then I'll go over 10 inches as well. And I'll hit escape. Just trying to put all my detail lines kind of one area at a time is what I'm doing with the tool. I'll use detail line again. So that's keyboard shortcut DL or the button in the Annotate tab. And I'm going to draw a medium line just to split this in half. And then I'll hit escape a bunch. I'm also going to do a detail line here just for kind of like my flashing that's at the bottom of my wall. So again, that's keyboard shortcut DL. And that'll be a medium line. I'm not necessarily measuring it out of where it's going. I'm just kind of placing it. And then that should be all of my foundation detail line work. Let's move up to our window. So underneath our window, we're also going to have a detail line with medium that represents some flashing under that sill. And we'll hit escape a bunch. We also have a detail line that's going to be medium that's going around this part here, this shelf angle bar here. So if we turn thin lines on, we can see it a little better. And I can even like move this super flush into place. But it's kind of hard to see with all of the line weights on top of each other. But again, in the Annotate tab or keyboard shortcut DL, we're going to do a medium line. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it around this angle bar here. And then out with a little lip. And then if I turn thin lines kind of off, I can even maybe like move that out a bit more, move that up a bit more. So I'm just using those keys just to move things out and over a little bit. We've got another couple of little dots here. These, we might have to do regions. I don't know if it's going to let me do them small enough, but I'll try. I'll do detail line. I'll keep it on a medium, and I'll draw just one tiny circle. Okay, it seemed like it let me make that one. Can I make it even tinier? Or will that be tiny enough? But I'll delete it. I'm gonna even try to make it tinier. Boop. Circle. Okay, cool. And these I'm kind of just eyeballing in a little bit. I'll do a copy. And then we've got some rebar going through. So that's keyboard shortcut DL. For our line style here, we're going to do a wide line, just straight up. And then we've got some detail lines as well for our roofing and our coping going around our roof. So for our kind of like membrane layer, again, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it with a wide line and detail line, just starting it and going up. And then I'll make a curve to it. I went way too far up, but that's okay. If you've hit escape a bunch of times and you've lost that fillet tool, you can just go back into detail line, and without drawing anything, you can click on fillet arc. And you can click on two lines and make a curve to them and just eyeballing that curve. I'll hit escape a bunch and I'll click on this bottom line. I'm just going to use my arrow keys to shuffle it over and down. So I want it close to the wall, but not directly on the wall. I want there to at least be a visible gap. And then I'm just going to bring this line down a bunch. And then for my flashing and coping, this is something usually where I'll open up an example drawing to copy. But at this point, I've gotten kind of good at not needing the example because it's kind of weird to how we want to show some of the joints. But I'll do keyboard shortcut DL. I'll use a wide line. I'm going to start above my wall and come down. And then I'll put a little detail out. I'll hit escape. And this is where it kind of gets tricky of how to make that lip around it. So I'll come over, out, back up past it, out a little bit on an angle, down, and then out a little bit on a lip. I'll hit escape a bunch, and I'm just going to fix some of these. I'm moving this over with my left arrow key a little bit just to leave a little bit more room there. And I'll go up with my arrow key and move this line up a little bit. I'll click on this one and I'll move this out a little bit more. I just want there to be like some visible differences between these lines. So it's sometimes a little bit of eyeballing to get it to look pretty good. And it takes some time and effort to learn how to eyeball those lines together pretty well. And then let me just double check. Yeah, so we still have our insulation to add in, and then some notes. But then this drawing should be pretty much done, which I feel like I did it pretty fast, but again, I'm also not doing it live in class, so maybe that's why. So for our insulation, that is in the Annotate tab. It's its own special little button right here. It might be larger on your screen again. And for the insulation in these walls, we want to change our insulation width to 1 inch and 5/8. And then you'll put it inside. Whoops. Do I want to do it by center? I guess I do want to go by center. Let's see. I'm going to change our option here to near side. Just kidding. To far side. And that way I could just trace up the side of the wall. So inside all of where we have our little C channels is where we'll put the insulation. So I'm just clicking on endpoints and going up, clicking where that top of C channel is, click again, click on it, and again, and one little bit up here. And we'll hit escape a bunch of times. There's no insulation up here. Now, the last couple of things that, again, I'm going to introduce to, but I'm not going to explicitly go through all of them in this video, is just adding in our text notes and our dimensions. So to put a dimension in is keyboard shortcut DI. We've got a dimension from our level 3 to level 4, as well as a dimension from the top of our window to the bottom of our window. And from our windowsill to level 2, and then we can click to place it. To place a text note is, again, it's just a refresher, keyboard shortcut TX, or this button here, or in the annotate tab, this button here. And then you can either have a single segment or a double segment. And we can click up, over, whoops. And then if I wanted to just be a single segment, I could click on single segment. And notice too how I'm always going to bring them out to the same area. Whoops. So I'm not going to place every single one of those in this video. That can be something where y'all pause and then add in all of the text notes. If it exists in the commercial solution packet, it should be a text note that you want to add in here. The last thing though that I will do in this video is show you how to create the other wall section. So if we go again into our level 2 floor plan, we have one wall section here. We've got another one hanging out kind of over, it'll be easier to see in level 1 where like this wall here is. And I think you're going to like this one a little bit more. So I'm going to right click on my wall section, and I'm going to duplicate the view, and I'm just going to create a duplicate. I do not want to bring detailing or as a dependent. And then that makes this blank copy. So now I still have wall section north south 1, and I have wall section north south 1 copy. I'm going to right click on that one and rename it to wall section north south 2. And then I'm going to go into my level 1 floor plan, and I'm going to start moving it, which is going to be hard. So I'm going to click just once. I'm going to use my arrow keys to start moving it over. Before I move it all the way where I want it to, I'm going to go back into this view and just verify that the window's still there. Because in this copy, it no longer has a window. So that's the one I'm now moving. So I was moving the right one. Sometimes it's hard to kind of tell. Then I'll go back into my level 1 floor plan. And I'm just going to keep moving it over until it's cutting through my view here. We may see in one of our sections, so if I go into my section view here, or my section view here, yeah, so we do now kind of have this detail popping up. We could leave it there or get rid of it. In the next video, I'll show you how to clean up and finalize kind of all of your views for putting them on sheets. But now we have both of our wall sections kind of finished and ready to go.